Yeah, you want to turn right up here. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pastor Troy Wynn, Sr., the senior pastor of the Freedom Church in Warner Robins, Georgia, also the CEO of Wynn University, and I have the privilege of impacting lives all over the world. Today, I want to share a couple of powerful principles with you that if you will incorporate them into your belief system and practice them, I promise you, they will help you level up so that you can manifest the life you desire, the person you want to be, including the things that you want to have in this life. You know, I was at my desk this morning just studying, preparing for this day, and a couple of things started to percolate in my spirit. A couple of things that I thought might be important for me to share with anybody that's interested in growing and producing this year. And I'm not talking about just growing anything. I'm talking about growing fruit that benefits the world. Becoming somebody who impacts lives by your presence, by your perspective, and by the principles that you live by. One of the things I teach over and over and over again, because I believe it's a game changer, is that you got to RYS. RYS. Write this down. Raise your standards. Standards are so critical in this world that most people don't realize that they are where they are because of the standards that they have settled for, or the standards they have set, or the standards that they live by. And here's what I've come to understand. Your standards are your standards. And you have to raise your standards if you want to experience a life beyond average. You know, I don't know if you know this, but average is the real enemy. Average is not your friend. The average focus, average discipline, average dedication, average commitment, that's your enemy. And that's really what's prohibiting you from growing, being fruitful, being prosperous, and experiencing what I call the extraordinary life. The life where you get to see what it's like on the other side. On the other side of poverty, on the other side of sickness, on the other side of depression, on the other side of failure. There is life on the other side. But you don't get there because you want to get there. You get there because you raise your doggone standards. And you say, you know what? I can't be concerned about what everybody else does, but I can be concerned about what I do. And the level that I want to live at it demands that I got to raise my standards. So number one, I want you to raise your standards. Here's why. Because your standards are too low for where you want to go. Your standards sometimes, oftentimes, many times are just too low for where you want to go. I meet people all the time and they have some of the most amazing dreams and desires. They've got some incredible destinations that they want to arrive at in life. The only problem is their standards are too low for where they want to go. And you might need to take a look today at where you want to go, what you want to do in life, the person you want to be. And then please juxtapose your standards. And if your standards don't match, please catch what I'm about to say. If your standards don't match, then you've got a problem. The problem isn't the world. The problem isn't the powers that be. Absolutely not. The powers that be are subject to your standards. Woo! Teach them, Pastor. Teach them. Yeah. Your enemies are subject to your standards. The world at large is subject to your standards. You say, Pastor, I don't know about that. Well, maybe you can digest this. So as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So as a woman thinks in herself, so shall she become. So that means that the world, the government, the system, your enemies are subject to your standards. Your standards, I promise you, are the only thing that stops you from leveling up and manifesting. And what you got to learn to do in this life, as you navigate life, let me drop this on you. Relationships are really doorways. Relationships are really portals. Relationships are really elevators, which is why you got to be keenly, consciously committed to building relationships with people who mirror high standards. And yeah, I know you guys like to say, well, those folks are doing the most, and those folks are so extra, and those folks just never settle, and it's never good enough for them. And we have a lot to say about people with high standards. But you got to understand something. Christ had high standards. Yeah, Christ was not somebody who walked this planet with low standards. His standards were so high that it literally drove some folks crazy. Why? Because he knew that on the other side of the human limitations were abundance, were prosperity, were power, were deliverance, and more than anything, were freedom. See, you got to recognize something, that on the other side of where you are right now, there is something greater, and that greater belongs to you. But you have to build a bridge to get there, and that bridge is your standards. Those standards become intensified when you build relationships with people with high standards. We have an old saying that I've added just a little bit extra to, and the old saying says that birds of a feather flock together. I've added, though, that birds of a feather flock together, and they all end up at the same destination. I happen to live on a lake, and I can sit on my dock sometimes when I'm fishing, or sometimes when I'm just out there meditating, and it never fails that geese and duck will come and they will land on the lake. And it's a beautiful thing to see, because normally it's a group of geese, it's a group of ducks, and they are flying together. Here's what I've noticed every single time. The ones that fly together, they all land at the same destination. When one lands, the rest of them land. Birds of a feather flock together, and they all land at the same destination. You better make sure that the folks you flying with, they're going where you want to go. Come on, Pastor Troy. You better make sure that the people that you call friends, the people that you fellowship with, the people that you share your ideals with, the people that you share your wisdom and knowledge with, or you allow them to share their wisdom and knowledge with you, please make sure that these folks are people of high standards and they're going where you want to go. Which is why you need people in your life that push you. You need people in your life to encourage you. And you need people in your life to have high standards. Why? So that you're reminded of your own high standards. Somebody needs to say no to LSP. Somebody needs to say no. Oh, this is good right here. To LSP. What is LSP, Pastor? LSP is this: low standard people. Woo! Who am I talking to this morning? Somebody's got to say no to low standard people. And I'm not talking about being rude. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be mean, but you got to be committed to high standards. You got to be committed to the life you want to live. You got to be committed to your dreams, your goals. You got to be committed to the things you want to do in this life before this life is over. And one of the main ways to help you is to say no to LSP, low standard people. Now, low standard people aren't bad people. Low standard people are wonderful people, okay? But if you want to live a life that is not low, then you're going to have standards that are not low. And you're going to have to be able to say no to low standard people. Here's what I know about low standard people. Low standard people oftentimes love to be in the presence of high standard people, but oftentimes they aren't willing to raise their standards. Woo! Good God Almighty. No, they love to be in the presence of high standard people until high standard people start talking too high, start thinking too high, start believing too high. And it's not that they're thinking too high, believing too high, talking too high. They're just talking higher than low standard people are accustomed to. All low standard people have to do is to raise their standards. But if they aren't willing to raise their standards, then you got to be able to say no to low standard people. Why? Because birds of a feather, don't forget this, they flock together and they all land at the same destination. Here's what I want to share with you. Higher standards is how you get to stand higher. Woo! Pastor Troy, man, somebody better say something now. I need 2 claps and a Ric Flair. Hold on one second. Woo! Okay, can I say that again? Higher standards is how you get to stand higher. And I'm not talking about standing higher than others. I'm talking about standing higher than you're standing right now. This is not a competition. You are not in competition with anybody else except yourself. So when we talk about standing higher, we're simply talking about standing higher tomorrow than you're standing right now. Standing higher in the future than you've stood in the past. And the only way to stand higher is you have to raise your standards, and you have to live your life by higher standards. Am I talking to you today? Is it time for you to raise your standards? Do you want to stand higher in the future than you've ever stood before? Then understand this, that higher standards demands higher levels of discipline. Higher standards demand higher levels of dedication. And please catch this with one hand right there. Higher standards demand higher levels of determination. Now, I would tell you guys, this is not easy. It's easier to have low standards. It's easier to settle. It's easier to acquiesce to what everybody else is doing. Shucks, it's easier to blend in, not stand out, not cause waves, not cause ripples, and just go along to get along. But I don't know if you're like me. I can't do that. I'm wired different, and my desires are different. Woo! Say it again. I'm wired different, and my desires are different. And because I'm wired different, and my desires are different, my standards have to be different. I'm challenging you today that if this speaks to you, and you know it's sparking something in your spirit, don't be asking nobody for permission. Don't send out a survey. Just make a decision today. You know what? I need to raise my doggone standards. I need to raise my standards. I need to say no to LSP, low standard people. And I need to understand that higher standards are going to require higher discipline, higher dedication, and a higher level of determination. Why? Because I want to stand higher in the future than I've ever stood before. If this is spoken to you, leave a comment. Let me know what part blessed you, and then incorporate it in your life. Don't just listen to this. Learn how to leverage this, because if you do, I promise you, you'll be standing higher in the future than you ever stood before. Peace.